Welcome to MOTS, where we'll be applying the Manzer or mostly Thurlow scale of quantitative analysis of pop culture narrative through a binary system.
Or MOTS! This podcast contains spoilers, mature content, and language. Viewer discretion advised.
Welcome back to MOTS, where we are going to ask a bunch of questions of the movie Blade Runner 2049, which we have just seen. I, of course, remain Scott Thurlow, here with Jane Manzer.
I just failed the Voight contest.
I always have. And Chris Morgan.
Peace.
Hi.
All right.
Very replicant-like. Very like Chris.
Yeah, that I failed the Voight Well, maybe I didn't fail it because I was trying to think of a quote from Blade Runner and everything blanked. And I'm like, oh, fuck.
A real replicant.
We erased your memory.
A real replicant remembered perfectly.
Yeah, so I guess did I pass or fail? Or how does
we'll
that
see
work?
shortly enough. But I think he's got a good logline for us, so take it away.
All right, this movie is I, Human or Children of Robots.
Children of Robots is so good. If you get that, you should love it. All right, so I'm going to jump into the intro body conclusion. So I must mention this here, I guess. This movie is 2 hours and 40 minutes. It doesn't feel that long per se, but it does feel a bit long at points, which is why I'm going to probably take points away here and there. I'm going to give the intro and body, if we're cutting up, pretty strong ones. And the conclusion was fine, yes, but I don't know, man. Like, I think we discussed a little bit precast that it was a little weak. So I'm not going to go through the whole plot. I don't assume you watched this.
Yes.
It's a lot of in, outs, a lot of replicants.
I am not the biggest fan of the original Blade Runner.
Yes. And check out our original review of it.
Yes. And throughout probably the first 2 hours of this film, I was in love with this work. And I agree with your assessment, though I have a stronger opinion about it, is that I felt... See, the conclusion definitely, I felt, detracted from the whole. And this is a weird movie because there's moments of absolute brilliance in this film.
I agree with that.
And there are other moments that are very cliche. Or
they're verging on cliche, I guess.
No,
you think they are, right.
Cliche.
That's where we differ. But
so I'll give an example. So this is going to be spoilers from here on out, which we've always do anyway, but nonetheless, I'm going to give specific examples of it.
Go.
So there are, and I think I see these stronger because of how much this movie subverts my expectations for most of this. But there are really artificial moments of tension that they bring in, which there's the final fight scene in the conclusion. So all of a sudden, one Harrison Ford as Deckard is trapped in a car, and the water is rising while two robots replicants fight each other. And so the clock is ticking down. It's artificial tension there. They also have the scene where the girlfriend, who I thought was the most the projection girlfriend, Joy, was one of the more interesting characters in there, and the relationship between Joy and Kay, who is Ryan Gosling, does
the main character.
Yeah, does a fantastic job. It is one of the more interesting romantic scenes I've seen in a film.
Yep.
And the fact that it's between a projection and a replicant, having all this complex emotions of two artificial intelligences falling in love with each other, it was brilliant. And then she's like, "Oh, you need to put me in this item so that they can't find me." But basically, I'm mortal now.
Wait,
and immediately this next scene, not the next scene,
but I see you mean, yes.
Right after they kill her. So there's these moments in here that in a lesser movie I would have given a pass, but I can't because of everything else they did in this. That was great.
I wanted to, before we got away on the conversation, I wanted to go back to the threesome because
everyone always does. Who doesn't want to go back to the threesome, man?
Kay has a holographic girlfriend, companion, and they can't really ever touch. So they hire Joy hires a prostitute, and she's like, she's going to join with it. So basically, she was superimposing her hologram over this prostitute so she could have Ryan Gosling's character. I mean, it was the most tragic, wonderful, beautiful thing. I mean, it was sad too. But the next morning, I love it where the prostitute's getting dressed and Joy's sitting there and she's like,
You got to go.
She's like, no. She said, I'm done with you. You can go.
Yeah, I did like that. It was a good touch.
And the thing I liked going in, the prostitute was like, you've got a good girl there because she knew what was going to go on. So it was really, from beginning to end, that whole scene was just gorgeous.
Well, first of all, I say, do androids dream of electric threesomes? They do.
Answer, yes, and it's awesome. And also heartbreaking.
Here's the thing. It's not necessarily sexual. It's two replicants
and it's not sexualized at all.
And a projection AI having one of the most
moment.
emotionally complex scenes I've seen in film, relationship-wise. And in fact, it's not... The thing is, most of the characters in this film are not human. You're watching
80% replicants, I'll say.
Yeah, you're watching on different levels of replicants too.
Yeah,
and it's like the original Blade Runner deals with you don't know whether Deckard is a replicant or not. This one they establish right off the bat that it is a replicant, and you're following a replicant in a world where he is an
outcast.
And almost every single human he comes into contact with is, in a sense, not racist, but like, I guess,
roboticist.
Yes. Against him. So like, there's a lot of, I guess we're jumping into themes here, but there's a lot of like complexities to these characters, and that's what makes the triteness of some of the plot glaring, decisions glaring.
Agreed. And I'm going to I really think we should just, the crux of the matter is that they're looking for a child that was born of two replicants, and spoiler alert.
We don't know. A human and a replicant.
Or a human and a replicant.
It's the plot of Twilight, like the literature things, where like a vampire and human, like and now people are fighting over it. And oddly enough, I thought of that, and it didn't really bother me. So
I didn't think of it at all.
Because if it was going to be if it was a replicant human, then Deckard is a human.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I thought you had said the opposite.
No, sorry, I don't believe that Deckard is.
No,
they never establish it one way or another.
No, but they heavily.
I think this movie more strongly does than ever before. But go on.
But basically, Ryan Gosling's looking for this child. He's having memories of hiding this wooden horse and being beaten up, and he goes to this woman who makes memories, and she's been ensconced, and Ryan Gosling shows the memory to her. And I'm blocking her character's name. She starts crying. And I don't think they ever really meant to pull the wool over your eyes that she ends up turning out to be Deckard's daughter.
Spoiler, she's the actual daughter, yes.
Yeah. But the thing is, and what I wanted to bring up, because we're discussing this, one of the things I liked when there's a resistance brewing. The prostitute you think is a bad guy. It turns out there's like this resistance. And when he meets the head of the revolution, the woman who actually hid Deckard and Rachel's daughter, she's like, to Ryan Gosling's character, she's like, it was kind of like in the story and fourth wall breaking. She's like, you thought it was you, didn't you? You always think it's you. And to me, it's just like, yes, because
I get it. Yes, you're right.
It was a great line.
It was a terrible scene. And that's the thing is, thinking too much about the plot of this movie ruins this movie.
Yeah.
Because it is, as I said, it's a repurposed Twilight instead of you're putting robots in for vampires.
Well, I wanted to give the skeleton of the movie.
Yeah, but like the thing is, I want to ignore the skeleton of the movie.
Oh, okay.
And I want to go to what, like, the interactions between all the characters, because this is what made it an interesting film.
Agreed.
Him hunting down the daughter, it
was like the big MacGuffin composed of tinier MacGuffins.
Yeah. And Dave Bautista's character at the beginning, that was phenomenal.
Yeah, he did a fantastic. I didn't know it was him. And I'm really happy that
I did, but he did a good job either way.
Yeah, totally. So, again, the interactions between the replicants in this world that they've built was, I think, the real great strength of this film.
I agree. So it looks like we're all giving it 2s for dramatic conclusion.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, I agree with you on the fight scenes, because I think they were trying to go for, all right, let's put it this way. The ending scene of the original Blade Runner, when he is fighting Rutger Hauer, did not seem like an action sequence to me. The fight scenes, both, the gun scene and the scene at the end, while the scene at the end was interesting, I thought it was cool. Having him being tied to the thing while Ryan Gosling's fighting this other, that's like out of Indiana Jones.
It kind of is.
So, and Edward James Olmos, as much as I love him and I love Gaff, his scene felt shoehorned in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I kind of feel like there was so many strength. The movie was so strong, but when you have a bad fight scene or they're just this is fan service. It really
It becomes all the more noticeable. Is what you're saying.
That's why I'm giving it a 2 because there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong overall, but if they had omitted these things, it would definitely be a 3.
I mostly agree. Like I'm sort of cutting up the difference between both of you. That yes, some of those things are egregious. Maybe not all of them, or to the degree that you guys think they are. But I get it for sure. And also, like, yes, I felt like they could have chopped a couple of minutes off of a couple of scenes, and the movie would have been fine for it.
I think it would have been better for it.
Sure.
And I have to say that, like, Ian wasn't fond of the ending. I loved the ending of this movie. I absolutely loved the ending of this movie.
Both Blade Runner films failed in the conclusions. They don't know how to. They know how to create a great world. They don't know what to do with it.
Well, the thing is, they can't answer anything. Sort of like, well, we won't. Like, I get that, but I think what I'm going to say is, it seems as if the most interesting parts are about, or what we're about to discuss, which is going to be themes. But we're all given the intro body conclusion A2, it seems, for mostly the same reason.
Yeah.
All right, and that will bring us to indeed themes with you, Chris.
This is really, really interesting because if you're talking about desire is a big theme, and desire is really felt with, because that's the whole thing is replicants desire to be more human. They're like this reproduction thing is a miracle, as David Bautista's character. But the whole time, what's carrying through that desire part is the relationship between Joy and Kay. And like, I agree with you. That was one of the more interesting romantic couples I've seen in a long time. It was tragic. It was sincere. So I picked desire. Of course, there's always the, creature, the Frankenstein monster, the, God and man. Oh, and Beth brought up something on the way over. She's just like, if they always run this problem is why do people keep, making artificial intelligence look human? And I said, it's the God complex of man. I mean, we are that narcissistic that, of course, you know what? Terrell's, batch failed. Wallace is here. Hey, we know better this time. We can control them. We can make them in our image and control them. So to me, the way, when we discuss that, to me, looking at the film now, that's exactly what it was because, Jared Leto's character was like talking about millions and then he births one of them and he goes, happy birthday. And then like 2 minutes later kills her, which is a great scene, I thought.
Yes.
Now, both Blade Runner films dealt with, in the most abstract way, the same themes, which is...
That's what I was going to say, of course. It's obvious, though. Go on.
Meeting your creator was... what is the purpose of life, and what does it mean to be alive? And both have replicants in this. The replicants were the villains in the first one, and in this
were they?
Ostensibly.
In a way, they were the one. Decker was chasing after the replicants who were trying to kill him and stop him. The strength of antagonists they were. In this one, you had the protagonist as a replicant, and the Rutger Hauer and Ryan Gosling are both searching for the creator. Ryan Gosling looking for his father, actually, in a more biological sense. Yeah. Rutger Hauer searching for Tyrell, the god. I thought they both handled the same abstract theme well. And I think perhaps this one handled what it means to be alive better than the original Blade Runner did.
In the original Blade Runner, Rutger Hauer's character was definitely the best character. He was definitely a standout. And I thought Ryan Gosling's character was going to be human, and right off the bat they tell you he's a replicant.
That was a great subversion.
Then all of a sudden I'm like, that's great because for that very reason, because the replicants in the first one were definitely more interesting.
Well,
the other thing that's heartbreaking is, and I think they made mention of when the woman's like, you always think it's you. I think part of Ryan Gosling's character, even though he knew he was a replicant, hoped he was going to be the child.
Sure.
Again, it's that.
It's very tragic because of what you said. I mean, I agree with all that. That one was obvious, but I think it was very well done. Like, what does it mean to be alive, to be human, or try to become more human, even if you were created by them? But I was going to bring up the fact that we did indeed, on the original Blade Runner review, we counted Rutger Hauer as a protagonist, if you remember that.
Yeah, we did.
So, I'm just saying.
Fair enough.
But it's also not uncommon for us to count protagonist and antagonist being the same person. I think that was an instance of it.
But regardless, I'm just going to add on to themes that they had, I thought, like a decent commentary on just the nature and pitfalls of technological evolution to the point where we can literally create. It's like the Westworld thing as well. Like, man, it's always going to be an interesting idea, but I think they integrate it really well, especially for the fact that the protagonist, like you said, the main character, Kay, is in fact a replicant and is established very early on, so there's no, like, question about it. They're like, here you go, now you're going to follow this character's story and, you know, his process and him dealing with the things he uncovers about the nature of himself and about the world at large.
In a way, I want to take a look at the Christian symbolism here, but not as bad as it was in the original Blade Runner.
It's not as blatant, I suppose.
But it's interesting because I think that the Wallace who takes the place of Tyrell, in a sense, has kind of a Satan feel to him of someone who's trying to create creatures in his image.
Usurping God's authority.
Well, because Tyrell had very much a kind of tinkerer, godlike aspect. If you want the Anthony Hopkins style from Westworld. Exactly. He's more malevolent, and he's more desperate for the power, which Tyrell was just interested in how far he could go for, I think, just interest
for
sake.
Science.
Yes.
Sure. I mean, I agree with that.
But I like the fact that Joy gave up her immortality for love.
Yeah, that's a good call.
And it makes no logical sense why she would do that, and that's what made her more human than. And I think you brought up, Chris, that like the androids or the replicants are so interested in becoming human, but every single human we see in this movie is kind of a
dickhead, and that's all, pretty much.
Yeah, it's either like are unhappy and miserable in their existence, and I don't know. There's just a lot of layers onto what it means to be alive, and why do they desire to replicate so much? Is it for power? Is it for love? Is it for?
Well, here's something I just noticed, because in the first Blade Runner, the guy who made the eyes, he held great reverence for the replicants. Like people were taking the replicants for granted; they weren't human. And this one, you see more of an overt thing where people are actually like writing on the door Skinner and, calling them skin jobs. Whereas the first one, it was kind of like a little, it seems like that's one of the methods of control was to marginalize them, get the public to marginalize them. Cause I didn't really notice really anybody paying reverence to and I think that's probably the chief of police came the closest when she let Ryan Gosling's character, but I think that's why they made Ryan Gosling a replicant, because they really didn't have anybody like that man who made the eyes that really held reverence. Like, what's his name's character? Terrell, the guy who made the toys.
J.S. something.
J.S. Sebastian. Yeah. They held reverence for it, even though in the original Blade Runner, everybody seems more or less indifferent. This way, to me, this time you got indifference plus bigotry.
Sure. Well, what's interesting is that the daughter, Decker's daughter in this, in a sense, has taken that mantle of Tyrell and Sebastian and all of that. It seems to me she has
both aspects, because she has a gender skin disease, I believe, which is why she couldn't get off world and why she's trapped in a little room creating dreams or creating the fake memories. Yeah. You're right about that.
But she always seems to be. She's one of the few unselfish characters in a way, one of the few or non-malevolent ones. So I think they do a good job of handling everything they want, and it's also. Oh, I do have one other extra point, and maybe it goes into style. But I'm interested to see the comparison to how the '80s viewed the post-apocalyptic future and how we modern style-wise look at it, and just little touches they have here and there, because obviously they had more technology to deal with. But I like how San Diego basically turned into a waste disposal for Los Angeles.
There was a dirty bomb in Las Vegas.
Yeah. So dealing with the different viewpoints was or different ways of interpreting the end was interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I agree.
All of that is contained in, like I said, the movie does a great job of having it all there. None of which override each other or become overbearing. Just well handled, well integrated. They seem all natural and organic, but it has a lot to say about many of them.
Yeah. Well, let's if you go back to the original Blade Runner, and we'll stick with Ridley Scott's original vision rather than the drive up the coastline. No, I got a point to make. Don't dismiss. Was that there was an implication that there had been some climate change that, because of pollution. So it was in a way, because that was before they came up, people started realizing global warming. That was a little bit of ahead of its time. And in this one, instead of showing that, hey, once you're out of the city, it's all green, they start outside the city and say, look, we've dried out the place. So what I'm saying is,
a shithole.
Yeah, I was about to say that. But I think it added to the verisimilitude of the world, because it's just like, it wasn't like the LA smog had then taken it over and the rest of the world was cool. It's like, no, LA is a symptom. And I liked how it was, there was like, we weren't sure if it was ash or snow. Definitely snow sometimes, could be ash and others, and rain.
Maybe both at once.
Yeah, both at once.
Think about that.
Yeah, it was a really interesting bit of texture throughout the film.
Yeah, definitely agree. So theme's pretty damn strong one.
I agreed.
I think one of the best parts of this film.
Yep. All right, and that'll bring us to antagonist. Interesting one with E.
Now this is probably going to be a controversial claim on my part, but I'm going to say, where we might have had debate in the original one, who is the antagonist here, it's pretty clear that Wallace, Tyrell 2.0, and his dragon, which is a second in command, I think, a replicant named Love, are the definitive antagonists. And they're effective for a little bit.
They're okay sometimes.
I think there's no, with all the nuance we just talked about in the themes, there's no nuance to the villains here. Wallace loves giving a speech about how he's got, it goes nowhere with, like, we occasionally see like clips of him through his life, and we're mainly focused on Love, who again starts off as kind of a subversive agent working behind the scenes and from a distance. There's a great scene where Ryan Gosling gets his police car floaty thing gets shot down, and she basically drone strikes from the comfort of her office to save him, because she needs him to chase this MacGuffin. But then, I don't know, afterwards it becomes more and more to that point of cliched type, and hamming it up. This is a very serious film, and the villains ham it up, which seems kind of
it's a little jarring sometimes.
Yes. I was going to say, this is the first time I'm going to say that I feel like the henchman was more interesting than, because we were talking about,
because of the fact she's a replicant, like, already.
Yeah, but we were talking about precast, is that, I was saying that there's less screen time for Tyrell, but he's more of a presence throughout, whereas Wallace has more screen time and less of a presence throughout.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
I think they should have omitted the middle scene and merged the first scene where he's giving birth to a replicant and then kills her, and then bring in Rachel. That was another thing that Beth said. It's like, they really got, what's the actress's name?
I don't remember.
He's like
Sean Young, maybe.
Sean Young. She goes, they really got Sean Young, and I'm like, yeah. She goes, she's crazy. What did they do? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe they had a handler for her.
Sure.
And he's like, and they had Jared Leto. He's crazy, so they have them in the same scene. How much lithium was on,
maybe it cancels,
or how much
cancels out.
Yeah, not lithium.
Anyway,
sodium, whatever, and. But I think if they merged those two scenes and brought him in like they brought in Ed Harris and Snowpiercer, it would have been much more effective. The reason I liked Joy was because she was really odd. She was over the top, but in a restrained way.
Wait.
Yes, but she's not the antagonist.
Joy, but
yeah, I know.
I mean, Love.
Love. Sorry, Love. Whatever. The the one who is doing drone strikes from the comfort of her own home. She reminded me a lot of Sophia. God, I'm blocking her name in Kingsman, where she's basically this henchman. But in this one, what's her name? Love is
Joy and Love. It's pretty easy to remember.
Yeah, sorry. She's more restrained over the top, but as soon as she stepped on Joy's memory card, I'm like, I want that bitch to die. So, sorry, I don't mean to be a female pejorative, but I was just like so angry. I'm like, I just can't wait till she dies.
It seems to me that she's such a presence in the film. This is such a long film too.
Yeah,
that I don't think and granted, there's so many great arcs for all the replicants and all of the projection AIs in this. I don't think, like, she starts off again, as I said, mentioned, a behind the scenes type character, and then she's full force in front, getting into fist fighting, and it's not even like my henchman. I think she needed a sub henchman to fail, and then I need to get my hands dirty now. It just seems that she just wanders from scene to scene with, as a replicant with no motivation because she takes orders, but I don't know. It just wasn't. You either needed Wallace to hold up the motivation for the villains, or you needed her to have some complexity, and neither of them happened. So I'm giving it a 0.
I see what you mean, Chris. Are you basically doing the same there?
No, actually, I'm going to give her 1 because because she wasn't. How do I put this? She wasn't a thematic threat, but she was a physical threat. And I what I'm saying is I cared enough about Joy and I cared enough about Ryan Gosling's character enough that when I realized she was a threat, I'm like, okay, mechanically, she did to me fulfill that antagonist role, even if it were on a visceral level. So I have to give it a soft 1, but I got to give it a 1.
Without a thematic threat, it's robots punching robots, and it's no more
monkey versus robot.
Yeah, so
I get that. It's funny. Like that, sure. The thing is, I of course may go to my old standard where that would be true if I considered them the antagonists, but of course I'm going to go with abstract, searching for identity in who you are.
That's the other part of it.
Antagonist.
Always part of. No. I mean, I'm going to have to agree at the end of the day. Like that's what I said. What I would have said, but if you take them to be, I think you're right. Like they could have got there, and I guess I just want to add that I thought they were going to do like, it's not a subversion, like explore love's emotions perhaps more further, more deeply. Because there was a scene or two where it might have been when Wallace killed the newly born one, where she's like watching sort of like a horrified look on her face, but she still knows she basically has to obey his orders regardless. So I thought they were going to explore a bit with that, and they didn't. And everything you guys said, I pretty much agree with. So yeah, it might be a soft. At least I'm more on Ian's side, I guess. It might be a soft 0, but still going to be
like I said, if she didn't.
She could have got there. She was close, Chris, but not quite for me.
I mean, like I said, this would be a soft 1, so I guess on the flip side of Scott.
Exactly.
But to me, because she did feel like, even if it were a visceral thing, I considered her a threat that she was going to harm some people I cared about. Right. I knew then and there, I'm like, okay, now I got to give this 1. Because if she didn't go there and she was just,
It's a cheap tactic to make you feel emotionally connected to the characters by killing Joy, in which they had to telegraph prior to it. No offense, Chris, but you're giving it a 1 because they manipulated you.
Yes, and I openly admitted, they got to that romantic part of me, and they, so it's just like,
he's saying the trick worked, even though we know it's a trick.
Yeah. So, like I said, I'm giving it a very soft 1. So Scott and I kind of balance each other out.
Sure. Well, I'm going to go on to protagonist, which is Ryan Gosling K/Joe, as I guess he acquires or is told to acquire an actual name, because K is basically part of his serial number. I think he did a great job, especially, like I said, I very much appreciate the fact that in the first 10 minutes or less of the film, it was made clear to you that he is in fact a replicant, and now we're going to go on from there. And like I said, it's him like exploring his false memories, or like the ones that are shared with Deckard's actual daughter, and him tracking down. Like ostensibly, he's basically told to cover this little secret up. But as he is doing that, chasing down various MacGuffins, he's learning more about himself because he's connected to it, at least in some tangential way. And also, his relationship with Joy is a huge part of it, which I thought was very well explored. I really love that, and I think Gosling did a damn good job. He was a good replicant, I guess. I don't know. He was just a good character, and he had a great arc, and if not a hero's journey, again, a journey of searching and finding oneself and connections to that. So I'm probably giving him a pretty solid 1 overall.
I agree. I think we listed a lot of reasons why, I would. I thought this is probably, this and Nice Guys are probably my 2 favorite Ryan Gosling roles. And I think because they are, I don't know. They seem to be opposite of each other, but in this one, Ryan Gosling displayed stoicism with more emotion. Like if you ever saw Drive, he didn't quite ever break through the emotion part. Here, he actually, even like we were talking about, like maybe they stayed on their faces too long. The camera did. He just did a lot with very little at times. And like and his reaction to when he realized that, Joy was like, I'm going to put my hologram self over this prostitute. The look on his face, which was like, kind of like, yes, but why? You don't have to do this. I really just want you. It doesn't matter. I mean, he did a lot. I mean, as an actor, he did a lot with it. And obviously and that obviously came through to the character.
Yeah, it was low key, but very well portrayed.
It takes a hefty acting talent to carry a movie acting like you have no emotions
and having not a lot of dialogue.
Yeah, that's
we have to say a lot with.
I could the nuance of his performance, as you were alluding to, Chris, was absolutely amazing, and I also loved it because you can look at his face during certain points and actually see what would it be like to watch logical processing units.
Experience something.
Like working, like deciding I can lie here, or I can omit information because that doesn't break the code type thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a phenomenal performance, so I'm going to give it a very, very strong one.
Yep, damn right. All right, so I'll bring us to secondary with you. Back to you, Chris.
Well, to be honest with you, and I think we said this is one of my favorite roles of Harrison Ford. And one of you pointed out, it's like, it's because the only role he's had in the last 20 years that he cared. They gave a shit about being in. Yeah. He didn't just was like paycheck. I thought Joy was hands down my single favorite character, because she was just, and we'll get to that dialogue, but she was, cliche to say, more human than hologram. I mean,
yes, I like that. Good little variation.
Yeah. She was empathetic. She was sympathetic. She was just a delay. And she's the reason that hook got me with her, because I actually did care about her so much. There was an innocence and then a knowledge about her. She was just such a nexus for so much, even if some of it was contradictory. I got to give it a 1. If there was nobody else that was good in this film, this would be the reason I'd give it a 1.
I mean, I pretty much agree with that. She's definitely the strongest by far. But I think everyone else, like you said, sort of in the same way, like does a nice job of rounding out the world itself and believable. Like the police captain, Kay's boss, Madam, I guess, the head of his unit in the LAPD. I'll leave one for E to speak about briefly. And like I said, I'm blanking on the daughter's name, but Deckard's daughter, I'll call her. Mm-hmm. And like you said, Harrison Ford himself clearly wanted to be in this film, like was having, if not fun, but was getting into his role, like reprising Deckard and interacting with this world.
I believed it was Deckard, not Harrison Ford walking through a role.
Exactly. So all of that, and just the, I guess I'll say, maybe it's more style, but I'll mention it here as well, the design of the cities themselves, the world building itself was always great and still is. So I'm going to count that as like just the background city and the environment as part of the secondary characters as well.
We'll get back to this comment in style, but Harrison Ford does not play Deckard. He plays the courier from
Fallout
News.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
So we'll get back to that in style though. Are you mentioning when you leave to me is Dr. Badger?
Yep.
Was it?
That's one for you.
Yeah, great funny character.
Again, fill out the world.
These type of movies require moments of levity, and he did a phenomenal job on making me laugh during an otherwise tense sequence of events.
Yeah.
And there's another guy that a lesser actor would have played over the top. That he was very restrained and believable.
Sure.
Yes. And I don't know, like overall, yeah. Again, I can't say enough about Joy. I think I should hate this type of character, but it was played so well. I'm going to give it a very strong 1 just for that.
All right, looks like we all are, and you can continue talking, E, about the dialogue. Talking about talking.
So they did less of the language mixtures in
this. They
did
a few.
They did a few, especially Dr. Badger. They actually started up again, but there's a definite focus on that kind of Creole that developed between Japanese
all the emerging cultures,
English and Spanish. This one had less. So that was kind of disappointing to me a little bit, but that's just my linguistic tastes.
Sure.
But overall, the dialogue was, aside from the antagonists, the dialogue was satisfactory and had moments, but again, personally, nothing special, but just enough to give it a default 1 in a way.
I agree. No, I mean, there's one line. All right. Jared Leto's character is already established. There's a whole monologue in the middle where it's just like he's getting pretentious, and I want him to go away. But the only thing that took me out of the movie, and I thought they were going to do this when they were talking about Terrell, and they never did. But when they're in the Resistance, and the prostitute says "more human than human" or a variation, I'm like, no, don't say it. Don't say it. And they said it, and I'm like, you didn't really need to say this, or if you were going to say it when you were when you were talking directly about Terrell, have like the henchman go, "more human than human." I mean, that's the part that screamed for it. That would be a callback that wasn't pretentious, but that put it in the mouth of her was just like, all right. But the rest of it, I have to say, I felt that the dialogue was very strong, and I think that like David Bautista, you know, his
monologue was awesome.
His monologue, that whole beginning, the dialogue there in itself, to me, would give it a 1. And I think a lot of it, I think we discussed is like non-verbally. If you could count, you know, their expressions as dialogue,
I think you can.
Should. I think that contributed a lot to when they knew when not to say anything, just let the scene carry it on. So to me, knowing when to use dialogue and verbal dialogue and when not to, I think is very important. So it's going to get a strong 1 from me, I think.
No, I pretty much agree with everything you guys have said. So I'm not quite wavering, but I was maybe debating this one more than I would have otherwise. But I think while there are a few road bumps and hiccups and sort of like missteps, perhaps, they are very few and far between. And like you said, they did a lot with a little and knew when to have no dialogue at all. In fact, you know, let the expressions and the emotions showing on people's face carry it, and then have an actual like interaction. Like one of the highlights for me was when Kay finally finds Deckard in Vegas, and they have like a drink at the bar and are just talking to each other. She's trying to figure out, you know, Deckard's history, and Deckard's like reluctant, like old man gruffly, like sort of telling him it. But yeah, so it was strong enough overall that I think it's a solid 1 for me as well. All right, and that'll bring me to style, which is one of my favorite parts of this film. Always has been, at least the franchise, and they kept it up. The shots were fucking amazing. Cinematography was top notch. I'll say there were some just fantastically gorgeous shots of landscapes, of just the world itself. And
I think part of it is they are, as I always watch the credits, and they had actual model makers, so it wasn't all CGI. There's practical. No, but that to me makes a difference.
Exactly, and it adds a layer to it for sure, in a good way. I absolutely agree. So, I guess I'll also do Steve-O's part, who was not here. The soundtrack also was top notch. It was the classic sort of jazzy noir, futuristic retro style. And I always love it. It matches perfectly with the world and many of the shots they had, like I said. So I really can't speak enough. It was just great, believable world building. Did it justice to what Blade Runner, the original one, established, and in fact expanded upon it.
I thought like the music, I just want to stay on the music, is they did a lot with variations on Vangelis' theme. Mm-hmm. They even had the melody of the love song from the first one.
Yeah, that's right.
But you know, Hans Zimmer, he came in and contributed to the score. So I mean, it was
can't go wrong with him.
You can't go wrong with Hans Zimmer.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I cut off Ian.
All good.
So I can talk an hour about the style of this.
I think
film.
We all can, true.
So I'm going to pick out a few things. One, I'm going back to New Vegas for a second. The Las Vegas scenes were so Fallout New Vegas. It's somebody should be sued.
The film wants you to think that. I guess that's what I said to you guys afterwards.
And Deckard has a dog, and he's all gruff and living in an abandoned casino, like Mr. House's
old digs.
It has to be a reference to that. Secondly, I want to talk about the use of projections in this, which go to Vegas. I know you weren't a big fan of this, Chris, but there's a malfunctioning Elvis and Marilyn Monroe like projection,
like a show, stage showing.
And I've never been more terrified of Elvis since his bathroom incident. It's it was actually a downright creepy scene, and considering that a human is chasing a robot, it somehow was very effective. And this goes to what you're talking about music and all that. They know how to make this thing moody.
Yep, exactly.
And like really capture the tone they want visually and through music. But the projection with Joy.
Yeah.
We brought up the threesome earlier, but like the fact that she malfunctions occasionally.
Yeah.
When it's like he can't physically touch her. She's just
hologram.
Hologram. So in a sense, they're mimicking a kiss when he gets a call,
a text message or some shit. Yeah,
and it freezes her mid kiss.
I know
that's so heartbreaking when that happened, and when she's outside the car when he gets shot down and trying to wake him, and you're just seeing her like kind of twitching and the image trying to reform. I don't know, like they had a lot of great ideas about sci-fi here and explored it visually fantastically, and I can't give it enough. This is actually, I take back on themes. Style was the strongest thing here.
That's what I said.
I've changed my mind about all this because I just realized that the gunfight. I know I didn't like the gunfight where Harrison Ford's chasing Ryan Gosling around because I felt like that was trying to be the Rutger Hauer thing.
I did actually get that.
I didn't. I'm trying to figure out why that bothered me so much because compared to the other things that took me out of the movie, that was a more restrained. But then I realized, okay, that's why it just kind of felt like a cheap imitation. But the Elvis was very creepy now I think about it. But it was also awesome when Harrison Ford's on stage and Elvis is singing "I Can't Help But Fall in Love with You," and they're having this tense moment, and he just like turns around and he goes, "I like this song."
Having the tense moment to Suspicious Minds too.
Oh yeah,
so that's a great reference there.
No, it was all great. Like I said,
so I changed my mind. I just wish they had found a better way to get there.
Convinced you that was a good scene. Now that you like it, no, it's all fair. Like I said, I came out of this movie being like, style is going to get the hardest of all ones instantly,
absolutely.
And just. It should be, go see it.
It's a gorgeous film to look at.
And I can't wait to see it again. I really want to see it again, maybe soon. But yeah, just did a great job. So ones for style all around. And that'll bring us finally to recommendation with you, Chris.
All right. This is a long 2 hour and 45-minute movie. I like long movies. I like, the Jarmusch movie, and I like a lot of Jarmusch, and I like 2001. I love slow movies. It is a slow
burn.
It's a slow burn.
Say that, yeah.
But I highly recommend it. That's the only caveat I'm giving because I know a lot. Sometimes, that might be 2 hours and 45 minutes, but it really doesn't feel 2 hours and 45 minutes because it is a slow burn. But just pacing without divulging to action really hit a cruising altitude to the end. I'm like, I can't believe it was 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Sure. I mean, I agree. I recommend it regardless of how long it is, even though like that might be a bit of a factor. But like I said, I didn't feel it to be that long. Yes, I took off points away when it felt long, but not that long. But I definitely recommend it. It's a great follow-up. They did it 35 years now later, or whatever it is, Chris.
Yeah.
They did it justice. And like we said, it contains a lot of important and updated themes that the original one established and influenced. And now this one sort of takes some of those and also, as you're saying, sort of the evolution of our vision of the future and melds them all together beautifully with also, a tragic story with interesting and well-done characters.
For science fiction, I think that this is going to be a very popular film because it's creative with not being too hard sci-fi. Yep. Like exactly. Arrival was, I think, the last one, which was heavy on the hard science fiction, like the linguistics. This one, it's more of a exploratory of what could have been, and it's worth seeing for their vision of the future and their vision of what is possible. And I want a projection girlfriend too.
I think we all do now.
It looks great.
I've wanted one before. I want one more than ever.
Krieger from Archer.
Yeah. He's no longer the outsider creep. Yeah. Anyway.
The state of he's so real. The state of California has let Kay marry Joy.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that'll bring us to the final scores. So I'm going to give you the numbers. Chris gave it a 9. That's the highest. Ian and I gave it an 8. Which brings us to, I think that's an 8.5.
8.3.
8.3, whatever. 8.3 overall for Blade Runner 2049, which I think is pretty damn solid. I thought it might be a little higher, but just the way it breaks down, I think it is.
Well,
at least
according to our
an
scale.
H movie, yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
might put it higher on IMDb,
Yes,
but
exactly.
based upon our narrative framework, this is what it gets.
Exactly.
And the thing is, I'll say this: I don't think it's the strongest plot I've seen in a movie, but I think that it's stylistically and thematically very important, but we view mostly on narrative.
Yep.
And
There you go.
There was, what I was thinking about in a lot of ways was Scorsese's film Kundun, which is like 3 hours. There's not a word of English spoken in it, but it's like visually so interesting, even though it's just like, takes place in Tibet. And this one was really visually interesting, considering, that we're looking at models and so forth. And, I felt the top to bottom, this is really visually interesting. And I found another antagonist was a Johnny Walker Black. Sorry, Rob. I'm saying he's like, there's 1 million bottles of whiskey in Vegas. He pulls out Johnny Walker Black. I'm like, are you kidding me? That kind of took me out of the movie. So
Sure.
well, you drank all the good stuff.
Yeah,
already.
exactly. Like,
all right, fair enough.
that's how if we're going to like nitpick it, that's what I would have thought too.
I don't know. I think I would have drank the good stuff and used no, I would have kept the Johnny Walker.
Well, anyways, when you get to live out in rundown Vegas, you can drink whatever whiskey you want in whatever order you like.
Yeah.
But until then,
everybody's going to be running for food and water. I'm going to go everywhere and just collect all the top shelf whiskey.
and then feed your dogs whiskey like he did too.
Dogs like whiskey.
Sure. Well, I think on that note, anybody have any final thoughts about Blade Runner 2049?
No.
I say go fucking see it. Like I said,
Absolutely.
it was damn well done and at least satisfied me in living up to the legacy that the first one established and it continued to explore the things that it did. So,
Well said.
It's an outstanding movie. It really is.
Yep. So, this has been Bon Mots. I, of course, have been Scott Thurlow, here with Jane Manzer
I like whiskey as well.
and Chris Morgan.
Good night.
And we see you in the next Replicant.
Editing and engineering by Scott Thurlow. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.